ARL 1930 to 1949. The significance of Marist's 22-17 victory over Ponsonby on the 16th of April 1941 didn't become apparent until after the Second World War, when 19-year-old Marist forward Johnny Simpson and 20-year-old Ponsonby fullback Bob Scott went on to become renowned All Blacks. Monocal's heavyweight pack paved the way for it to become New Zealand's top club team after beating West Coast champions Blackball 23-9 at Carlaw Park in October 1943. Monocal fielded such formidable characters as Peter Riranui, 111 kgs, Steve Watene, 105 kgs, and Aubrey Thompson, 97 kgs, and in set scrums were able to get possession by simply walking over the ball. There were 3 Mountfords in the Blackball lineup. Centre Bill Mountford also represented New Zealand. But the man that attracted most attention that day was Cecil Mountford, who took his talent to Wigan, with Ken Mountford being the third brother. Auckland was undefeated when provincial football returned to the Rugby League calendar in 1945. The Blue and Whites thrashed South Auckland 46-7 and Wellington 46-7 at Carlaw Park, and won return matches in Wellington by 47-17 and in Huntly 26-13. But their sole encounter with West Coast was a thriller, a very late penalty goal by fullback Warwick Clark getting Auckland home 8-7 at Carlaw Park. 1946. And the presence of 11 Welshmen in the 1946 England touring team undoubtedly had much to do with their name change to Great Britain for future visits. Led by legendary Gus Risman, the Lions beat Australia in 2 tests and drew the third, but they lost to West Coast and New Zealand in the only test. They outscored Auckland twice by 9-7 and 22-9 in front of 15,000 and 12,000 spectators in respective games, the latter match being Risman's farewell to international football. Players of special mention in these games were Ron McGregor, Maury Robertson and Roy Clark in the backs, and no better forward on the ground than Travis Hardwick. Auckland experienced contrasting results in 1946 when it ventured to the South Island for the first time in 11 years. A strong Auckland squad lost to West Coast at Greymouth 10-7, but they outplayed Canterbury 51-28 in Christchurch 2 days later. Balmain crossed the Tasman to take on Auckland's best after winning the 1946 and 1947 Sydney Premierships. Richmond enhanced its already outstanding record against Australian clubs when it beat Balmain 17-9 in the 1946 clash. However, Balmain edged out Mount Albert 16-11 in 1947. The 1947 Tigers didn't have it all their own way, losing to Otahuhu and Marist before winning a return game against Otahuhu when they were beaten the next day by Waikato Maori at Huntly. 1948, and being pitted against Auckland in June 1948 proved a bridge too far for a Kiwi team which showed tiredness and were without key players in vital positions. No wonder, for most of the Kiwis had been on a 35-match 1947-48 tour of Britain and France. Auckland won 30-9. Auckland scrum halfback Russell Green was identified as the outstanding individual player, while Ray Cranch and Doug Price were splendid Auckland forwards. Auckland spread its talents during a weekend in 1948 when players went south to play Canterbury and West Coast on consecutive days, and another team stayed at home to take on South Auckland. Well, the tourists defeated Canterbury 32-22, but were defeated by West Coast 18-2. Auckland hammered South Auckland 60-9. Marist didn't have it all its own way in 1948, despite winning the Fox Memorial. It shared the Rukatai Shield with Richmond and was beaten by Mount Albert in both the Roop Rooster and Stormont Shield. Sydney's champion Western Suburbs set up camp in Auckland, but were defeated by Ponsonby, Mount Albert and Richmond. Perhaps the Sydney siders were foxing. They saved their best for Marist, winning 19-15. Ron McGregor. In 1949, Ron McGregor became secretary of the Auckland Rugby League, succeeding the legendary figure of Ivan Culpin, a position Ron held until 1962. When he stepped down from Auckland, he became the minor leagues delegate to the New Zealand Rugby League, an involvement with the national body which would last until 1986. In 1970, McGregor began a 17-year term as president of New Zealand Rugby League. His tireless work was deservedly recognised over the years by the awarding of a Queen's Jubilee Medal in 1977, New Zealand Rugby League life membership in 1978, the Order of the British Empire, OBE, in 1983's Queen's Honours, and a Queen's Service Medal, QSM, and a life member of the Auckland Rugby League. On each occasion, he humbly and modestly accepted on behalf of his sport. Ron McGregor also spent a decade as Secretary of the International Rugby League Board, a truly remarkable administrator who'll never be forgotten by those fortunate enough to have had dealings with him throughout the world.